Thank you, Sir David. Just leave it there. What are you picking from the Drinks Trolley for us?
Well, Dave in Telford on the Drive Time Drama inspired me earlier, and I thought it's wet and it's miserable and it's dark, so why not a cup of tea all round?
Okay.
Yeah, no?
No, I don't like
Well,
tea.
it's January. People might be doing dry January, which you shouldn't. You should support your local pubs. But if you are, nice cup of tea.
Have you got any... oh, never mind.
Wow.
So today's...
Yorkshire tea I always go for.
Of course.
That's my preference.
Got any chamomile?
I do have some chamomile. I can knock you up a cup of chamomile.
I'll have some of that. First confession of the year is a New Year confession, and it comes from Frank. Thank you very much, Frank, for this tale. Father Simon and your honourable collective, I'm writing to request forgiveness from your good selves. It's New Year's Eve, 1971.
Oh.
I am a 15-year-old. Several months earlier, in fact, a lot of this confession reads like it's a novel. Okay?
Oh, very good.
But we'll get to it.
Yeah.
Several months earlier, my mum finally plucked up the courage to leave an abusive relationship, and my mum and her 6 children left the family home one overcast day. We all left with only what we could carry, and for me it was a couple of carrier bags of clothes and a small transistor radio and earpiece. Whenever I went to bed, I would listen to a very crackly Radio Luxembourg.
Ah, of course.
Very happy memories. The Fab 208. We were scattered far and wide at various relatives. My elder brother and I were sent to live with my Aunt Gladys and her partner Chaz in the city of Portsmouth. The accommodation was a pretty spacious maisonette above a naval tailor's shop, a stone's throw from the main dockyard gates. My aunt and uncle had never had children and lived a bit of a hippie lifestyle, so it seemed to me anyway. My aunt dressed in a long, baggy and flowery clothing item number, which I think is called a dress.
Yeah.
And didn't really believe in housework.
Okay.
I think she'd have been quite happy living in a tent or a camper van. My uncle was a jolly man, was always in a very tired-looking suit, had an overgrown beard and moustache. He didn't really have a job, but he was very accomplished as a musician and could play so many different instruments. They were a very happy couple and very kind to my brother and I. Back in the day, there seemed to be pubs on every street. Being near the dockyard, there were many more than usual, and that is where my uncle would ply his trade. He would have a gig virtually every night in one pub or another, and a lot of afternoons as well. Excuse me. On this particular New Year's Eve, he did an early session in a pub just around the corner, so he could come home for New Year Day celebrations. At about 11 p.m., he arrived home rather merry, it seemed, and announced that we would all see in the new year in drinking the finest, fine old Scotch whiskey. And he rummaged around in the back of a cupboard and produced this dusty but very valuable bottle. Clearly it was reserved for special occasions. He poured 4 very generous tumblers of what he described as a drop of pure nectar. He flung open all the windows that overlooked the street and said that come midnight, all the ships in port would sound their horns. He sat down at the piano and said, we'll have a good old sing-along, the way you used to do back in 1971.
Yeah, back then, yeah.
And he began to play. I put my glass to my lips to take a swig, but as I did, I caught what some people would call a sweet aroma. To me, it sounded like disgusting cheap aftershave, and so therefore I only pretended to take a sip, wondering what to do. Not only did I find it smelling disgusting, I was, as I told you at the beginning, Father Simon, 15 years old, and I knew that breaking the law in this matter was a very serious misdemeanor, and I didn't want to go down that path.
No.
I had several pretend sips during the first number as my uncle was playing Penny Lane by the Beatles. I eased myself closer to one of the open windows. While singing at the top of my voice, I launched the contents of the glass out of the window. As I did so, I heard a woman scream out.
Oh, no.
Just below the window. I immediately sat down so as not to draw attention to myself, and I continued singing, not daring to look out of the window. I could still hear the woman screeching that a bird had done a whoopsie on her head, which is how we referred to it in those days. I felt a little relieved that no one was going to knock on our door and complain I hadn't had the blame. A short while later, my uncle noticed my glass was empty and deposited another helping in my glass.
Oh, yes, of course
I
he
didn't
did.
have the courage to say I didn't like it and that I was 15.
Of course.
Because to my uncle, it was clearly a drop of the good stuff. Just before the stroke of midnight, I manoeuvred myself close to another window. But before I let loose with this glass, I had a quick peek out of the window before depositing another complete tumbler of fine old expensive whiskey onto the pavement below. We sang Auld Lang Syne, and then my aunt had us hanging out the windows, listening to the ship's foghorns and calling out Happy New Year to the revellers pouring out the pub. That was the only time I celebrated the New Year at my aunt and uncle's. I have happy memories of that evening, but tinged with a little guilt. Sadly, my aunt and uncle are no longer with us, but I still feel I need my uncle's forgiveness for wasting his pure nectar. I would also ask forgiveness from the poor young lady who was just enjoying a night out with friends and who just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah, well.
And who thought a seagull had deposited a package all over her. Also, she might have been a teetotaler, Father Simon, or someone from the Salvation Army, maybe, who now was saying they'd been dumped on by a pigeon but was smelling of whiskey. What were the implications of that?
Well, I don't know.
Serious reputational damage.
Oh, right. Okay.
Anyway, I put myself at your mercy, of your holiness, your clergymen, your clergywomen, and all of your parishioners. Let's just see how forgiving we are. And then Frank says, best wishes to you all. I've enjoyed the confession slot over your shows over many years. I discovered Greatest Hits Radio quite by chance some months ago. Always thrills the advertising.
Yeah, they love hearing that. Yeah.
And retuning my car stereo. I love the music, love the format, love the show. Listen every day.
Yes.
Love Frank. Okay, Sister Susie, what do you say to Frank?
Well, Frank, I don't feel like you've done anything wrong here, really. I feel like it's your uncle's fault because he should have kept it for himself. What's he doing sharing it with a 15-year-old anyway? So I don't forgive your uncle. But of course you're not going to like whiskey at 15. I just think that's an obvious thing. So I'm going to forgive you. Frank,
Yes,
I don't think you did anything wrong.
Correct. I think we can forgive Frank, but I'm not sure that we should forgive the uncle. Anyway, but let's just check in with the brother from another.
Yes,
couple.
I mean, what a heartwarming story this was to begin the saga that will be 2023. And I love the Some Mothers Do Have 'Em reference as well about the...
Done a whoopsie.
Done a whoopsie. Very nice. Love that as well. But my quibble with Uncle Chaz is not the offering of the whiskey. It's more flinging open the windows in January. Who's opening the windows in January? I'm not paying to heat the street.
Yes,
it's
but
absolutely disgraceful.
You can hear the
Get
ships.
the windows
Hear the
shut.
ships.
No wonder it's cold. You've got the windows open. It's January. So for that reason, I'm going to forgive.
Very